This episode is on the best practices of deploying Chrome to a school or a school district. And to lead this topic, we welcome Google Apps certified trainer and Google certified teacher and author of the 20th Time Project, How Educators Can Launch Google's Formula for Future Ready Innovation, Kevin Brookhouser. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much, Jason. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, very happy to have you here. I think this is going to be a great session, and we'll get right into it. Let's not waste any more time. We'll jump right into the first question. And I think what a lot of people want to know about is, what are some of the most common misconceptions of what Chrome is, and compared to deploying traditional technology like MacBooks or PCs.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with Chrome, the web browser. It's gotten a lot of market share. It's my personal favorite web browser with all of the extensions that are available, and it's super fast and secure, and the different tabs are sandboxed, and it's just a great web browser. And then people are also familiar with the Chrome operating system as well, which is basically a computer that runs the Chrome web browser. I think the number one misconception on that, though, is people think that the Chromebooks, which runs Chrome OS, that they're useless unless they're connected to the internet. And I would say, of course, all computers, no matter what operating system they're running, is going to be more useful when it is connected to the internet. I mean, these devices are internet-connected devices. But I think people think that Chromebooks in particular are just absolutely worthless when they're not connected to the internet. And that's simply not true. I mean, you can dive into the settings and turn on offline access for a lot of the applications that you would normally run on a Chromebook when it is connected to the internet. So, when you've got offline editing turned on, you can create documents, edit documents, create calendar entries, read and compose emails while you're offline. Personally, I love taking my Chromebook when I'm on a plane because typically the battery life on these Chromebooks, because they're so lightweight and they have a small footprint, that they just last and last and last. So I can get a ton of work done when I'm not connected on a plane ride all the way to Hong Kong.
Excellent. That's great. Those are some really good points. So a lot of the misconception that you experience is that people think that if I'm not connected to the internet, that's a completely useless device. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
And you know what? It's true that a lot of our students, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I say there's still an important number of students who don't have connection to the internet at home. I'm optimistic that number is diminishing significantly. And the cost of broadband internet access is falling, and so more and more kids are going to have access to the internet at home. But look, they don't. But they can still get a lot of the work done if they have access to one of these Chromebooks without being connected to the internet.
Okay, excellent. And to actually, I think this is a similar question. There is a little bit of confusion around what Chrome, the web browser, versus Chrome, the device. Google itself, right, has so many offerings, right? They have, there's Google Apps, there's Chrome, as we just talked about it, Chromebooks, so devices. There's the Google Cloud Platform, Android through Google Play for education and more. So when you're working with education sectors, right, how do you simplify and put rails around any of this confusion during the early stages of consulting?
Yeah. I mean, it can get overwhelming for any administrator, even someone who's really techy, to see all of the offerings that Google provides. I think it makes a lot of sense to just start with those services that are going to create the biggest bang for the buck. Mm-hmm. And I think Google Drive is probably the best place to get started. By establishing a school district or Google Apps domain. By establishing Google Apps, teachers and students can collaborate on documents, presentations, and spreadsheets in the Google Drive ecosystem. And that really ramps up collaboration and educational accountability while also maintaining student and staff privacy. So you can think of it as Google Drive as a free version of traditional Office software packages. But these packages have supercharged and simplifies collaboration tools. So, for me, collaboration is key for just getting work done in the outside world, outside of education. And I think that we can bring that into education to prepare our students for their future. Now, once Drive is deployed, it might make sense to bring in mail and calendars, because those are really powerful and simple tools for administration and teachers to deploy. And then finally, Google Chromebooks. I really think that Chromebooks provide the single most effective hardware solution for running these products, because they're so easy to deploy. The admin console is incredibly powerful. So I would start with Chromebooks. Now, Android, you mentioned Android devices. I love my Android devices. And I think that they're really great for supporting Google with Google Play for Education. They provide great support devices, so kind of as secondary devices for middle school and high school, if you're able to pull that off. And then if we're talking about the youngest level students, often teachers and administrators will find that Android devices work really great as primary devices.
That's interesting. So you actually recommend that for depending on the grade level of the school that you're dealing with, or even if it's a district, really to separate the use of Google between the different grades in terms of functionality and use. So Android, for example, would be great for, I guess, would be, great pre-K through maybe 4th or 5th grade. Is that what you're saying? And then as they get comfortable with that type of technology, then evolve into the Chrome devices?
Yeah, I think once we hit like grade 4, we're starting to expect our students to do a lot more creation and building, doing a lot more writing, building websites, creating presentations. And I've just found that having a computer with a keyboard and a trackpad allows students to more easily produce that kind of work. Whereas in a lot of the elementary settings, the Android may be the preferred device, because a lot of times they're going to be working through apps that support their learning, rather than doing as much heavy lifting with the writing and the creation.
That's interesting. So you're saying that it's the app, when you're in the younger ages, it's the applications that are going to be providing the learning. Whereas when they go beyond the 4th grade, or they get to that 4th grade part, they're going to start creating on their own. And that's where you use something like Google Apps for Education for them to do the creation rather than being guided.
Yeah, and it's certainly not two buckets that are completely separate. I see it as kind of a spectrum. Certainly these mobile devices can be very useful in the high school setting. But again, I think if you're looking for the most bang for your buck, from grade 5 on, I would push more towards the Chromebooks. And then under grade 5, I think that the Android ecosystem may be preferable.
Interesting. So, okay, let's continue talking about the grades that are a little bit later in years. So when you're dealing with a school district or a school that is looking to deploy Chrome, what have you experienced as some of the most common mistakes that you see schools make when deploying Chrome to those later grades?
Yeah. So I've got to first admit, I'm a gadget guy. I love shiny gizmos and everything, and I get excited about those. But what I found is that deploying this kind of technology hardware and the services to teachers with, if you get overexcited but you don't provide the fundamental training, I think that's the #1 mistake. So, and I'm going to talk a little more about training later. I think another big mistake in adopting these services is doing it without the broadband infrastructure to handle it. I personally think of broadband access as nothing less than a human right, and I'm not kidding here. The students who have access to broadband internet have an enormous advantage to those who don't. And I'm really excited that our federal government is making universal broadband a significant priority. I think schools should think of their connection to the web the same way they think of their water main line. If their access to water on campus became disrupted, the school would just stop until it was fixed. And I would like to see broadband raised to that level of importance, because I think that it's increasingly our access to knowledge, and that's what we do in schools. So if you run a speed test on your network and you're not getting at least 10 megabits per second down and 3 megabits per second up. And I got to say, I'd want a lot more than that, but that's like a bare minimum. And if you're not getting that, I think we should really direct your resources into getting that increased.
Interesting.
And yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say is that I've also seen a lot of districts really lock down their Google Apps for EDU domain, out of fear of the unknown. And a lot of times when you lock them down so hard, it renders those domains almost useless, or at least it takes away a lot of the benefits of using Google Apps for education. I certainly understand people treading cautiously because, look, the internet can seem like a pretty dangerous place. But you know what? Swimming is also a really dangerous activity as well. But we don't lock kids out of pools to keep them safe. No, we introduce them to the shallow end, and we gradually teach them to become safe and eventually allow them to swim on their own, right? And I think we should take a similar approach to digital citizenship and access to the internet, so that when they do leave the school, that they are prepared and they become web-savvy individuals and that they're prepared to handle that.
That's really interesting. I know sometimes when I'm talking to different educators, they like to use the analogy that, the students are sometimes students miss out on some of the most key functionalities, like how do I balance my checkbook? And, I like that. That's very similar to some of what you're explaining here about technology. And, you can still provide an incredible layer of protection and security through monitoring and through the tools that I think Google provides you, while also allowing them to swim a little bit into the deeper waters to help them. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, the media does a really good job of portraying the internet as this very dangerous place, and that there's all these kinds of predators out there looking to take advantage of any kid who's on the internet. But if you look at the numbers, they just don't reflect that. The biggest threats to kids are people that the kids know, not these strangers that live out on the internet. Certainly, there may be some risk, and I wouldn't want to say that there's zero risk. But I think that the solution is to empowering students with the knowledge of how to be savvy on the internet, how to recognize someone or something that's unreliable, and be able to identify those kind of dangerous sites out there that could get a computer or even an individual in somewhat of trouble.
Interesting. So, okay. So to that point, what in your experiences, now that we talked about some of the common mistakes, such as locking down and things of that nature, what are some of the key advantages and also some of the disadvantages too in deploying Chrome? Some of the watch points, if you will. If you're an organization, you're a school district or a school looking to deploy Chrome, what are some of the key advantages, and then what are some of the key disadvantages that you've experienced?
Yeah. So from my perspective, administrators are constantly struggling to find that balance between maintaining control of the deployment of the system while also allowing individual schools, teachers, and classrooms the flexibility to be nimble, to be able to make decisions on their own. I personally naturally lean toward distributing control to individual schools by allowing them to control their own domains, as long as there is a trained Google Apps domain administrator available to help maintain it. But the Google Apps domain console does allow a district to assign different levels of apps permissions to different organizations and different users. So really what's cool about the Google Apps domain system is that administrators can just decide how they want to strike that balance.
That's interesting. Thank you. Okay. So now that, let's say that organizations, they've made the decision, they're going to go Google, they're going to give Google Apps to their students and their faculty and the administrators. Let's talk about deploying some applications too. In particular, you have the Chrome and the Google Play Store. What are some of the more popular applications that you think are highly advisable, and also are there any that you say really haven't cut it quite yet?
Right. Well, let me just start by saying, I get a lot of when I introduce Google Apps and Chromebooks to teachers, a lot of times they reply saying, hey, I'm already swamped with work that I have to do, and I don't need to add another thing to my already busy schedule. And I get it. I'm a teacher as well. I'm swamped as well. Excuse me. But what I would say is I would only introduce those products and those services that save time and increase student learning. So I try not to introduce, brand new, you have to learn this whole new thing and redo everything that you teach. I'm a big fan of taking those lessons that I would normally deliver to my students in the form of a lecture that I would deliver every single year. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of flipping those lessons to video. And what I mean by flipping is it's the flipped model of education. So the traditional model is the teacher stands up in front of a class and delivers instruction to the class. And then students go home and then they practice that with their homework. And they have a parent who may or may not be competent in helping that student work on that assignment. So the flipped model turns that upside down and says, all right, well, let's have the teacher deliver the instruction, but instead of doing it in class, the teacher does it in the form of a video. So students go home and they watch that video, and then they come to school and they practice it using what otherwise would have been the homework, and they work on their homework in class while they have a teacher right there who's an expert to guide them along that process. And that actually frees up a lot of the teacher time, and it allows teachers to focus on what they got into this craft in the first place, to really teach students. And the tool that I love for flipping my lessons is a Chrome extension by TechSmith, and it's called Snagit for Chrome. And what it allows you to do is capture screenshots of your screen, but it also allows you to record your screen and your voice at the same time. Mm-hmm. So rather than flipping the classroom through using a camera pointed at me in front of a whiteboard or whatever, I'm really developing my lessons on using a slide deck and recording my screen, but you can hear my voice. The other tool that I love is Edpuzzle. So Edpuzzle is another Chrome app that allows you to add interactivity to any video that you find on the internet. So that could be a video that the teacher creates, or a video that the teacher finds somewhere on the internet. And what I mean by interactivity is you can throw questions into that video, and as students watch that video at home, they're prompted with questions. So that really keeps the students engaged in the content. So it adds more of that, I like to say, that lean forward experience, and keeps them accountable. And the other really cool thing is that there's a dashboard that teachers can use to see which students have watched which video and how they responded to the questions.
Oh, that's great. So you can also get some enhanced reporting from a teacher standpoint to really be able to monitor your students. That's excellent.
Edpuzzle is an amazing tool, and I definitely recommend anybody check that out.
Great. I'll make sure to put a show note once we publish this. That's great. So speaking of applications, the Google Apps for Education suite comes with a tool that is not available on any of the other editions of Google Apps, and that's Classroom. Mm-hmm. So what do you recommend educators should do with this tool in comparison to maybe the other applications you just mentioned?
Sure. So Classroom is a tool that Google developed last summer. They released it to some of us early, and we gave them a lot of feedback, and that was incredibly encouraging because I saw Google respond to that feedback very quickly. They wanted to make sure that they developed this tool with teachers in mind, and they really did an amazing job. So Classroom is specifically intended for project management for teachers who assign work to be done through Google Drive. Now, a lot of us teachers have been using Google Drive in the classroom for a long time, but we've kind of had to hack together that program because it was really designed for the workplace and not necessarily for education. And so we found some workarounds, but Classroom eliminates the need for a lot of those workarounds. It takes a lot of those rote tasks that we used to work through and simplifies them by creating template documents for students and allows them to turn those documents in. So there may be some power users out there who use tools like me, like Andrew Stillman has created Doctopus and Gubrick. Those are two tools. They're add-ons to spreadsheets that do similar functions as Google Classroom. And if you're a power user, you may want to stick to Doctopus and Gubrick. Because they're super feature rich. But for teachers getting started with tech, the Classroom is the great tool. It's not a fully featured learning management system like Moodle or Haiku, in that you can't create assessments, and there's not a full featured grade book. But Classroom can work really well in conjunction with a learning management system if you have one already, and that's no problem.
Interesting. Okay, that's really helpful. So let's take a sidestep and go back to Android, because you did mention it a little bit earlier, and I find Android to be just as interesting as Chrome. But like we suggested a little bit earlier, knowing that there's Android and there's Chrome, there could be a little bit of confusion. Yeah. Do you find, like in particular, the Android, the Play Store, and these applications you were talking about for the younger students in particular, do you think that for the full districts, when they're doing both Chrome and Android, and then you have that Android segment, does that muddy the waters, or do they actually complement each other?
Yeah, good question. Here, look, I love Android. I'm a big fan of teaching kids how to program, and one of my favorite tools for that is MIT's Android App Inventor. And I've got tons of these Android devices, more than I care to admit. But for academic work, I still think that Android probably should take a backseat to Chromebooks. If you've got a limited amount of resources, I'd rather see a Chromebook in the hands of every student, and then these Android devices serve as great secondary devices, or maybe fourth, fifth, and sixth devices. I won't judge you if you have more than that.
That's great.
Oh, the other thing that I wanted to add that is kind of a new development is Chrome, the Chrome operating system is starting to deploy a service that allows you to run Android apps in Chrome itself. And I think administrators and tech directors should keep a close eye on that, because that could allow you to run Chrome apps right in the Chrome on a Chromebook, which could eliminate the need to have one of those devices.
Interesting. Well, you know what? You actually touched on a really interesting part. We've been talking a lot about the students and the teachers, but we haven't talked too much about the admins and the, I guess you could say, the stakeholders, those people that are running the school district. And if they're the ones that are in charge of leading, the Let's Go Google movement, there's a lot of accountability there. So from your standpoint, what are the key performance indicators that these stakeholders should be measuring when it comes to a successful deployment of Chrome?
Right. Well, Google's all about data, right? And making data-driven decisions. And Google does provide powerful analytic tools in the admin dashboard that allows administrators insight into how much the tools are being used. So there's powerful measurement tools. But the thing that really gets me excited about the deployment of these tools is not just in the numbers of them getting used, how often they're getting logged in, and how many docs are getting shared with others, but it's the creative ability for students and teachers to go out there and make real things that maybe serve a real audience. That's really what my book's about, and where I'm really focused. So what I would say is, to get a real sense of how well the tools are being used rather than just the numbers, I really encourage teachers to showcase the work students are doing in Google Apps, with the Google Apps and with the Chromebooks. And the sharing is really easy, and you can pinpoint those showcase opportunities just to the right people. And when you give kids the opportunity to perform for an audience outside of the classroom, they're motivated to work even harder, and they produce even greater work when they know that someone else is there appreciating their effort.
That's actually a really interesting point, and I actually just have a quick follow-up on that. To the point of, when you're really trying to advocate that the students are doing remarkable things, they're being creative, they're being collaborative because of this application suite. How do you use that type of data with the naysayers, those that are concerned. They read the headlines. Maybe the headlines aren't exactly accurate, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still a headline, and therefore it's scary. And then when you're dealing with someone's child, that becomes even scarier. So how do you counter those concerns?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, those headlines are the headlines that sell newspapers and sell commercials, right? The headline of, hey, everything in this Google Apps domain is running smoothly. No one's going to buy that paper, right? But here's the deal with with my students, we're using Blogger, we're using Google Sites, and all of these are platforms that allow you to determine exactly where you want to share what specific data. So with the Google Apps domain, the simplest thing is you can lock any document, any site, any blog to be just within that domain. So the only teachers and students who have accounts within that school domain, only they can access those sorts of documents. So if there is some fear about the big scary world out there, it's really easy for administrators to determine how the sharing is distributed.
Excellent. So with that being said, it sounds like you clearly have a lot of experience, and I know you do. And it sounds like a lot of what a lot of you do professionally is education. It's you train, you educate, you advocate how to utilize this application suite within the education sector. And sometimes when I hear that, oh, why do I need to be trained on Google? It's so easy, right? It's the most intuitive application suite that's ever been designed. Or I have a personal Gmail account, so I don't need training. Can you explain to me why training is why? And I don't like actually using the word training. I'd much rather say education and knowledge. But why is that so critical?
Well, I mean, it's true that the Google tools are intuitive. But the thing is, first of all, I would say that we all need to model a constant growth mindset, that we're all constantly learning and that nobody knows it all. I've been a Google Apps trainer certified trainer for over 5 years. And I'm still constantly learning more and more through my friends and colleagues and my personal learning networks. So, we'll never reach that point when we know it all. But as specifically for these Google tools, yeah, they're very intuitive, but they were designed not really for educators, or most of them weren't. Classroom's the one exception. But the tools are specifically designed for, knowledge workers. So it's not only important to provide educators training to show teachers how these tools can help build student learning and accomplishment, but I also think that it's really important that the training comes from an experienced classroom teacher. Now, almost all of us have experience observing a teacher because we all went through school. But really only teachers know what it's like to actually run a classroom. And I highly recommend that you look for trainers who have that classroom experience, because they can bring in that insight that I don't think anyone else really can.
That's excellent. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there too. And just because you've used the application doesn't mean you know how to use it in order to make the students and the educators utilize it better, right? I mean, go for it. Yeah, please.
And the cool thing about Google, and it can be challenging, is that these tools are constantly changing. They're getting updated on a weekly basis. So when I'm training a group of teachers how to use a specific tool, there have been quite a few times when I'm like, oh, that's not exactly how I remembered that tool being yesterday. Let's dig in and figure it all out. And if we can adopt a sense of, hey, this is interesting, they've probably added some new feature for us. Let's dig in and look and do some searching to figure out the answers. That kind of mindset's really exciting. It makes living in this time a pretty fun place to be.
That's for sure. Excellent. And speaking of fun, right? And like you said, this application suite is always changing, always growing. Something new every day. A session you probably did yesterday can get altered today just because of new feature releases, and it really requires the people that are educating like yourself to just be completely up to date as much as possible. And it's a challenge, I'm assuming, for these educators to have that responsibility when they're supposed to be working with students.
Yeah, yeah.
So with that being said, what do you see coming next in the world of Google Chrome in particular? You know, what are some of the trends or tools that that these educators should be more aware of?
Right. Well, the most exciting trend that I'm seeing is a trend that's been going on for decades, and that's Moore's law, right? This technology is getting cheaper, faster, smaller, and just more ubiquitous. The prices of Chromebooks are now entering the sub $200 level. Wow. And we're talking the kind of computing power that would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars not that long ago. And so we're given more and more opportunity, not only to get these devices in the hands of our students in the United States, but globally. So I'm really excited about, you know, getting that next billion students to have access to these devices. I'm really I'm idealistic about this. I believe that technology and education. I've dedicated my career to technology and education because I believe it may be the single greatest lever we have to provide true social justice. Now, with one of these inexpensive devices and a connection to the internet, we can provide a true world-class education to every student in the world. I mean, this is a huge deal, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
That's excellent.
And you know, we talk about the storage that's available on Google Education. It just hit literally infinity, right? I mean, you can, no cap on the amount of files. Oh, wait, Jason, there is one cap I forgot to mention. You can only upload a file that is smaller than 5 terabytes. I'm sorry about that limitation. I know that's really cramping your style.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable what they're doing and how they're releasing it. And I'm actually, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that you're really excited about devices, and you know, some of these are, you know, less than $200. I've also I remember reading an article or something that some of the manufacturers, they're actually creating devices that are becoming more education centric. Yep. With notifications on the actual devices, so the teachers can see whether or not the student's actually paying attention or they're browsing around or something else. It's just pretty exciting stuff.
It's really great. And yeah, Intel recently released a kind of a prototype of what a Chromebook could look like in the future. I got to play with it a little bit. It had a handle on the back of it, so students can just carry it around like they would a lunchbox, be much less likely to get dropped. It's got a camera on the top of the machine that has magnification capabilities on it, so it's like it has its own built-in microscope as well.
Oh wow!
It is an exciting time to be in education.
That's great. That's just really cool stuff. Kevin, this has been really excellent, and I can't thank you enough for your insight. I think in particular, you know, I love the swimming pool analogy. I think that really summarizes the whole. If there's any type of fear or concern about going with Google Chrome for the education sector, use the swimming pool as a way to look at it and focus on broadband first. I think that's also a really nice point that you made. Is it's critical, and it should be looked at as you would electricity or water, as you put it. I think that's really quite excellent. So, look, I want people to know how to talk to you rather than watching this session. So, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about some of the challenges that you come across when businesses reach out to you? Yep.
So, you know, most schools recognize that professional development, investment in professional development, you know, is one of the ways to supercharge student learning. And they know they need to, that is the biggest bang for the buck. The problem is most professional development, and look, I've been there, it's mind-numbing. So schools who reach out to me, they can energize teachers about the possibilities of implementing technology in the classroom. When educators realize how these tools can help expand the confines of the classroom walls and help students reach well beyond their perceived potential, they're motivated to take charge of their own professional development and get involved in these online professional communities. And they really see that their growth as an educator becomes really limitless.
That's excellent. Thank you for that's interesting. So, okay, well, tell us a little bit more on what you're working on today. Anything in particular that's especially interesting?
Well, the most exciting thing is the work that I'm doing in spreading these tools to teachers around the world, deploying Chromebooks, talking about how these applications can take the drudgery out of education. I don't know, some teachers might love doing the paperwork, but I like to outsource that to my computer and really spend my time as a teacher on the learning. So that's what I'm most excited about. The other thing is this project that I started a few years ago, and it's called the 20 Time Project. And it's inspired by a culture within Google in which Googlers, engineers take these projects that are not necessarily endorsed by management, and they try to get other engineers to take on these projects. And for example, Gmail is one of the products that we use all the time that came out of just an independent project that some Googler decided to take on. So I thought, what if we take that kind of insight, allow our students to take on independent projects to try to solve a real world problem that has a purpose? And so I told my students that I'd give them a day a week to work on a project of their choosing. And I've been doing that for about 5 years, and my students have been producing this amazing work. And you could learn more about it on the website 20time.org, 20time.org. And the book that you mentioned earlier details the history of that project, and it's also a roadmap for teachers on step-by-step guide to implementing their own 20 time in their classroom.
That is extremely exciting, and I will absolutely make sure that the show notes has a link both to 20time.org and also the book that's on Amazon for educators to get more insight on what you guys are doing. Really, really fascinating stuff, and I think that's why not take from one of the most interesting things that Google does at the workplace and apply it to students, which is, these are our greatest minds and they're our greatest assets. So let's get them thinking now instead of later.
Yeah. Yep.
So how can schools and districts get in touch with you?
Well, I've got a website, kevinbrookhouser.com, but if you can't find that, here's a suggestion. You could Google me. I'm the only Kevin Brookhouser out there, so if you look me up on Google, my name should come up pretty prominently. So feel free to email me or contact me through anywhere you find me on the web. I'm all over the place out there.
Excellent. And why don't you talk a little bit more about why schools reach out to you?
Well, they're really they see that there is a potential for leveraging these tools, but they're looking for someone who can provide this training in a way that is dynamic and keeps teachers engaged. And that's really what I provide. It's not a boring seminar on, all right, then press this button, then press this button. It's really focused on student learning and making sure that we're taking advantage of these tools to really supercharge student learning, but also taking some of the drudgery out of the profession of being a teacher.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure that information is also accessible on the show notes as well. And that concludes this episode of the Business Technology Podcast. Profound Cloud is a managed services and cloud technology partner in Manhattan, and we highly recommend Kevin for all education groups looking to get more information about training and just educating the educators. It's something that we very firmly and strongly recommend to always go to Kevin. It's really what he does, and he's top notch and the best. So in addition to that, do feel free to contact us directly with your topics and thoughts regarding the next episode of the Business Technology Podcast. You can simply send an email to podcast@profoundcloud.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And special thanks, Kevin, really for your time and insight. It's been excellent.
Thank you, Jason. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.